welcome back to my channel. I'm Dominique, and I wanted to have a candid chat about some things I wish I knew before I started working in the lab. I'm well into my second year now, and I've documented my journey as a med lab student, a new grad med lab scientist, my first year in the lab as a generalist, and even changing jobs all the way up to now. So if med lab science interests you, welcome to my corner of YouTube. Take some time to check out the videos and playlists that are currently on my channel just to see my journey so far. And this is gonna be like a Q&A style video. So the first thing I wanted to answer is, do I regret becoming a medical lab scientist? Absolutely not. I went back and watched all of my previous videos to reminisce last night. And in hindsight, I could see the growth in my journey. Like I could see all the times when I was happy and when I was sad and frustrated, which is a benefit, I guess, of vlogging, is that you can go back and see your memories. So yeah, I seen all the emotions. And then I watched that 6-month update video. And I seemed so miserable, and I don't think that was the case. I think I was doing a lot of venting then, and I quit my first job video, both of those videos, because my channel became like a safe place for me to share my experience, the good and the bad. But what that ended up doing is kind of discouraging people, and so like I never wanted that to be the case. I was just venting, and I don't regret choosing this job. I think the actual job itself was great. I'm happy with my job responsibilities. You know, the variety that you're going to find in healthcare really is the work culture and the leadership. That is what I feel like makes or breaks the overall experience for me, I guess. This is a friendly reminder that everyone's experience in this field will be different. This video is more so just a conversation about the things I wish someone would have told me coming out of school. Some of the things I mentioned you may or may not experience or relate to. It really just depends, especially when your day-to-day job may look different than mine. Like, you may be doing some sort of patient testing or working in a lab environment that's completely different. So just a reminder that the things I talk about are specific to my journey. So with all that out of the way, let's discuss what I wish I knew before becoming a medical lab scientist, now that I'm a medical lab scientist. I wish I knew that it would get easier. When I first started working, people were telling me all the time that once you get towards your first year, everything just clicks. And it is true. I agree, I concur. Like, many complex situations that came up for me in my first year are a breeze to handle nowadays. A lot of things that used to stress me out when I first started are an afterthought now. And I think I also noticed that I grew up in a sense of not being a baby tech anymore when other techs began asking me their questions or coming to me for a second opinion or help with a technique or something. It's like I realized I wasn't a new grad anymore when people trusted my expertise. So I just want you to know that it gets easier. It does. This job can be challenging, especially transitioning from school to working, but I promise it gets easier if you stick with it. I think I would have stressed a tiny bit less if I knew that growing through the learning curves of healthcare was just a part of the job. The next thing is that communication is important. I wish I knew how much I had to communicate. And we're first going to talk about phone calls. There is a lot of verbal communication that comes with working this job that I just wasn't expecting. I honestly thought I was going into this stereotypical introvert job where I'm just isolated and all by myself and that I can do my job all day, every day without having to talk to people. And that is absolutely not the case. There's a lot of communication that is involved with working in a lab. Generally, I talk on the phone a lot. I work with other professionals like nurses and doctors. And when you're running a bench or a department for the shift or whatever, you're carrying out some form of testing on specimens and you're using technology or specialized equipment to do this. So gradually you become an expert in a very specific topic, the laboratory. Like, you are the lab. And people are going to look to you for results. They are going to want help to figure out proper specimen collection, how to order tests, what is the test, result turnaround times, all sorts of questions. And when you're new, you don't know these things yet because you haven't spent much time testing. And depending on how big your lab test menu is, you may never know all these answers. But nobody expects you to memorize every single detail of the laboratory. It's impossible. My point is that we have to communicate with this job for the patients. When you first start working, other healthcare professionals are going to ask you questions that you don't know the answer to, and it's normal. What you learn to do is to become resourceful so that you can find the answer. And then you begin to know where to start to find these answers as well, whether it's the LAS or the policies or people that you can reach out to for help. But the most important thing is to have confidence that you can find the answer, even though you don't know the answer off the top of your head. And through repetition of certain questions being asked over and over, you will know how to respond with the most helpful suggestions. And for me, I'm pretty introverted. Like, I know I have this channel, but in real life, I'm really quiet and reserved. I don't really conversate. It takes me a very long time to get comfortable with people. I might as well be the epitome of the shy, closed off lab tech stereotype. And so getting used to answering phones was a big challenge that I had to overcome. And over time, I became less stressed having to talk on the phone once I got used to what they might ask me. But one thing I like to do is learn something new. So I had to change my mindset from feeling literal doom when the phone rang to looking at it as a chance to gain knowledge by helping other coworkers, like the doctors or the nurses and other members of the clinical team. Each call helps me as they ask questions and look for my expertise. And my hope is that if I didn't know the answer this time, then the next time somebody asks me this question, then I'll know what to tell them. And usually they ask the same types of questions over and over. So it's easier to give them an answer right away after you've had time to answer phone calls. So another thing is I wish I knew how technical this job would be. Like, one great example of this is troubleshooting. Like, let's say an analyzer is not working properly. You're having trouble getting the analyzer to read sample barcodes or something. I don't know. You may decide to call the manufacturing service for support. Or you may decide to submit a ticket online to IT or biomedical engineering, whoever it is. They will ask you what's happening. Where is it happening? What's being affected? What error messages are you getting on the analyzer? They need all this information in order to understand your problem so that they can help you. So this point here is that you have to relay details when you're explaining situations. I promise you that you will lose a lot of time if you're being vague because they can't figure out what's wrong in the first place. For me, troubleshooting, I think I'm the type that will keep going until I've tried everything, but then I'm right on the phone with service for support. I think that comes with how curious you are on figuring out the resolution to the problem. There's another type of tech that if this analyzer isn't working properly, they don't even want to touch it. But for me, it eats me up when the error messages are popping up or alarms are going off and I don't know why. Like, I just need to know why. And I want to resolve it. So when I first started, like for real, Roche and Sysmex support knew me on a first name basis because I called so much. And it's nothing wrong with that. The resources are there so that you can use them. But now I've gotten comfortable with certain analyzers that I'd rather try as many things that I can think of first so that I'm not going back and forth with service asking me to do things that I've already done. So when it comes to troubleshooting, think about this with the S-bar technique, which is something I have to use at work. But so you explain the situation, you give the background of what you might have tried, you assess the situation, and then you are able to come up with the resolution. But being detailed with troubleshooting can be helpful in these situations, so don't be vague. Like the barcode read issue. Off the top of my head, I will try to make sure the physical barcodes are printing properly. So I'm going to see if the barcode ink is fading or partially obstructed. Are the labels placed on the tubes crooked? Is the error happening on every sample or just a few? Is something wrong with the loading rack? Are the samples even received into the system? Did I clean the barcode reader on the analyzer? Are there obstructions on the barcode reader on the analyzer? Did the analyzer lose communications to the LAS? So like my last ditch effort is to try a reset of the analyzer because sometimes they just be glitching. So service is going to ask me those same questions. And I'd rather be proactive and get those steps done first so that we can address this issue faster. And I can stop having to manually program samples because that takes time. And funny enough, this just happened to me where all of our analyzers lab-wide lost communication with the LAS. So you bet I was on the phone with IT to fix this issue because at a certain point it's out of my hands and I need support. So yeah, communication is huge in this profession. And I honestly didn't realize that beforehand. I wish I knew that mistakes will happen. I get asked on videos from time to time by you guys about mistakes and how to go about it. I have made plenty from misreading procedures to reconstituting things wrong. Like I've made a ton of rookie mistakes when I first started out. And I would like to mention that we also have a lot of written communication in the form of technical writing. So we need to be able to read our policies, our procedures, our operator manuals, and guidelines to do our job effectively. On another note, don't go into the lab expecting to be perfect. Like, you will be humbled real quick. Things happen and human error does exist. So just be mindful that the longer you do testing, the better you will get with your techniques. Practice really does take precedence here. Back to reading technical writing. The one thing you have to back you up in decision making is your policies for testing. But that requires you to understand the policies and procedures in order for you to make those decisions. And sometimes the procedures are so technical that it may be so hard to understand at first. Basically, don't let nobody make you feel stupid for asking for clarification. There's nothing wrong with asking for help if you don't understand the policy. Honestly, the real technical policies or those vague policies are like reading a textbook. We might both read a page, but understand it in two totally different ways. So it's better for you to ask for help with understanding instead of making a mistake from misinterpretation. I'm not just saying this stuff. This is literally coming from my own experience of misinterpreting procedures in blood bank testing, just because what I was reading just didn't click. Nothing crazy, like no harm or anything done. I just kept getting funky results. So I was fresh off of training, trying to resolve a blood type discrepancy for the first time. I needed to perform a test to decide if a cold agglutinin was present for this patient. A crucial step in this procedure is to wash your cells. And that was how the procedure was worded. Step whatever, wash your cells. And so I'm doing this procedure and washing my cells and everything. And I knew that if the cold agglutinin was there, then by the end of this pre-warming procedure, I should have gotten negative results. And for some reason, I had a patient that kept coming up positive. Even after me repeating this test several times, I didn't go further with interpretations. I just stopped because it was just weird. And so I asked for help by my lead tech, and they had me repeat my testing from start to finish in front of them. I get to washing my cells, and they started laughing. And they were like, "Do you notice what you're doing wrong?" I was like, "No, I'm following the procedure. It says wash your cells." And she was like, "What are you doing with the automated washer?" You need to manually wash your cells with the tubes you left in the incubator. I knew the textbook knowledge behind this procedure or whatever, but I wasn't doing actual patient testing long enough. And so it wasn't clicking. And for context, the reason behind my false results is because I spent almost an hour warming up my test tubes just for me to use an automated washer that would have cooled my cells down again. So of course, I was going to keep having false positive results from the cold agglutinins because I kept using a cold automated washer. And so, because of my misinterpretation, this procedure was updated to say in bright red letters, "Do not use an automated cell washer." And thankfully, I waited on making a decision. I asked for help so that I didn't give this patient wrong results. But I was able to correct my misunderstandings by asking. And now to this day, I hope to never use an automated washer while testing for cold agglutinins. But it was a rookie mistake, and I can laugh about it now. And I just remember feeling so stupid that it didn't click for me. And nobody was making me feel bad about it. It's all just learning experiences. But all this to say that if something doesn't seem right, just ask for help. On another note, one part about working in healthcare is having integrity. So if you make a mistake and you know you made a mistake, say something right then and there, because the faster it can get corrected, the less chance of impacting patient care. Like, always remember that the patient is going to be affected by the work that you do, whether we feel like it or not. And the results we produce really do matter to a patient's life on the diagnosis and their treatment decisions. Like, it really does matter. Patients should remain at the center of why we make decisions. Just don't forget that the sample you're holding is going to help somebody's mom or their dad, sibling, grandparent, aunt, uncle, somebody's friend. Like, basically, it's going to help someone's loved one. And integrity is especially important for departments that depend on our clinical judgment, like blood bank and microbiology. Even scope reading and hematology are interpreting results in chemistry. Like, once you send those results to the chart, it's permanent. You don't want to be the reason Mr. Tyson gets a misdiagnosis or medication's all messed up, or wrong blood products issue because you made a mistake and didn't speak up before medical intervention happened. Granted, there's a lot more with automation that will help facilitate not having those mistakes happen, but things happen. And so yeah, just be mindful. It's also okay to ask for help. I've learned a lot about time management too in the laboratory when it comes to multitasking. When I first got off of training as a new grad, like my first night in blood bank, which for background, the blood banker was also responsible for microbiology for night shift. One of my first nights in blood bank, I start the shift by walking into two patients from the ER at the same time Both had a positive antibody screen, no prior history, and they both had orders for red cell units. So maybe you can imagine the stress I felt when those screening cells came up positive, and I had to figure out what to do next for the first time on my own. But wait, there goes the incubator alarming that positive blood cultures are popping off. 1, 2, and 3, back to back to back for me to set up gram stain and call results. And here come the non-stop stat COVID testing. But now it's 1 in the morning and the orthovision shut down because the maintenance in QC timed out. Plus, I still had other microbiology plate setups and other molecular and kit testing to do in there as well. All of a sudden, it's 2 in the morning and I'm getting a call from the ER doctor asking about the blood for those patients with positive antibody screens. Like, every night for my first week was like this. And each night of my first week in blood bank required me to problem solve and prioritize my workload. So it was pretty overwhelming because at some point I was like, oh shit. I need to take a step back and breathe and get my life all the way together because time was passing by, but it felt like I was getting nothing done because I was being pulled so many different directions at once. So prioritizing and time management are important skills because you do not want to get behind or cause delays in patient care because they will blame the lab real quick. And so that entire first week in blood bank for me felt like it was nothing but antibody workups and positive blood cultures, just constant. So what I learned was to ask for help from my coworkers because I was drowning. And all I had to do was communicate by saying, hey, I'm going to be stuck in blood bank focusing on this antibody ID. Do you mind helping me with micro? Such a simple question for me to ask now, but at first I didn't know how. I felt like I had to do everything on my own so that I didn't burden the other 2 techs that I was on shift with. When that wasn't the case. I had 2 other coworkers on nights that didn't mind helping me if they had the time. One was in hematology, one was in chemistry, but they were both trained in micro. So I didn't have to drown in work. All I had to do was communicate to my coworkers that I needed help, especially with me being new at the time. So don't feel like you cannot ask for help to manage your work, especially since healthcare is a team-based job. So although you're working in a lab, we are still expected to work with each other with the common goal centered around helping the patient. So just ask for help. The next thing is, I wish somebody would have reminded me to remember good ergonomics. I'm slouching in this chair as I talk right now, but make sure you're practicing proper postures. Like, I notice I slouch all the time at the microscope or when I'm plate reading. I constantly have to remind myself to sit up straight, even right now. But especially in the lab, so that I can adjust the scope to my posture, not me adjusting to the scope, if that makes sense. There's a lot of repetitive motions in the lab, like pipetting and sitting, standing, staring at computers all day. Like, there are risks associated with the laboratory setting if you're not practicing good ergonomics. Use your stools if you're short like me. I know I tend to get things off of shelves that are way higher than I should be getting, and that is not good. So get the stools or get somebody tall to do it. Just be mindful of potential workplace injuries. Also, making sure you have good sneakers with good insoles, and even maybe buy the insoles. During my first 6 months, I developed real bad foot inflammation in my arch from walking so much on those hard floors and not having good sneakers. So to the point of my feet being in real pain every single day from standing for long periods of time or walking a lot. So be mindful of your shoes, having good support for your feet. Another thing that I did recently was that I let go of sneakers with shoestrings. I don't know what it is, but I was tripping over my shoestrings a lot. And that's not good when I'm walking with my hands full or something hazard like in micro. I switched to these Nike sneakers. Yeah, I ditched the shoestrings completely and I couldn't be happier now. Lastly, I wanted to discuss self-care. All the stress of experiencing new things as a new grad can be overwhelming, from graduating to taking your certifying exam to trying to find a job to learning at your new job and meeting all these new people, learning all these new skills, and just adjusting to work overall can be stressful. So find time to practice self-care and prioritize your health by listening to your body, especially if you're going on an off shift, because my year or so on night shift kind of messed me up a little bit. So yeah, my daughter was saying that night shift could have increased inflammation in my body because my asthma went from mild all my life to severe in just a year of me working full-time nights. It impacted me negatively. Not to say that people should not work night shift. I personally, actually, I don't mind working it, but if it's impacting my body, it made more sense for me to find a day shift. I did my time, and I just happened to have moved to day shift within a year, but my actual working nights actually didn't bother me mentally. It just affected my breathing. So, yeah, of course, talk to your doctor first, but I began taking supplements when I was adjusting to shift work in general. Vitamin D and B vitamins, vitamin A, and melatonin, those supplements allowed me to adjust to a better sleep schedule. I had more energy, was in a better mood, and my body didn't ache as much. And I was also able to sleep during the day, like full on 8 hours, 8 to 10 hours sometimes. So I also drink a lot of tea. I'm not really a coffee drinker. I'll drink it, but I really love a little Teizo and Yoki tea. And that's what I drink every day to help stay energized during 12s even. I drink a lot of green tea. I've also found ways to relax, like yoga and Pilates and relaxing baths, walks in nature, and that kind of thing to balance out the hectic shifts that leave me wired and unable to relax when I get off of work. So all these things can help me de-stress from work. It really does help. So I'm also finding new ways to practice mindfulness every day as well. It helps me to stay in a positive mindset when I start to get down about certain things or frustrated in general. So I know it sounds like a lot of stuff, but for one, you have to prioritize your well-being. And two, we can't help patients if we're not helping ourselves. So I have been working on self-care habits, and I encourage you to find ways to prioritize yourself in the midst of working in healthcare. So yeah, these are a few of my new grad tips. I'm still under 5 years of experience, so I still have plenty of learning to do and experiences to be had, but these are just things I wish I had the heads up on when I entered the field. So I hope you find this video helpful. Hopefully it's more positive than my previous candid chats. I feel like all the videos I made in my first year of working, especially that new grad blues video, I just felt like I was in such a negative place when I made those videos, but I promise things get better over time. So yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for everyone who continues to support my channel and interact with me through the comments and messages. I do appreciate it, and it definitely makes me feel like I'm not alone and that there's at least someone on the internet that cares about what I have to say and can relate to what I'm going through. So I also appreciate when you guys share your stories in the comments. It gives me and everyone who reads a different perspective outside of our own, because we all have a unique journey in the lab. But yeah, I'm just rambling now, so I will talk to y'all later. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos on my journey in the lab.